Welcome to our Mobilizing Leadership production of Living Leadership. This series works from the premise that leadership is not a title, but a mindset. Filmed in one take, it explores how people navigate beyond the status quo and captures their insights on what leadership looks like across their work, life, and community. The Discovery Whiteboard session is facilitated by Stuart Morse, and we welcome our guest. Welcome today to another Living Leadership interview, dialogue, and today we're here with Mason Rowley. Mason, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, I am a postgraduate student. I just got my master's in international studies from the University of Wyoming, where I focus on human rights violations, transitional justice, and voluntary repatriation of forcibly displaced persons.
Very good. So when you think about leadership and how it shows up in both work that you've experienced in your life, what are some common themes that how do you see it?
Mm-hmm. So I think one aspect of leadership that I think of is tone of voice and body language, because in any type of setting where you're trying to either resolve an issue, encourage your team, work through a solution, I think that the way you say something really matters on how that message is received.
Okay. So would that fall under, so when you say how you say something, is that across both of these?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. A lot of times your body language is reflective of your attitude, but especially the tone of voice.
Okay. So that's really interesting. This idea of say something that can also show up in how vocally comes out.
Mm-hmm.
But then if I'm hearing you correctly, what's your posture in regards to your body?
Mm-hmm. A lot of times people say, defensive posture is like with your arms crossed.
Right.
Kind of like caving in on yourself can kind of be like a defeated sort of position. So you want to have, your shoulders back,
right.
Good eye contact. But I think really a big important aspect is the tone of voice, because say you're trying to give me instructions on something.
Right.
The way that you tell me those instructions, I could take it as you're maybe chastising me, maybe you're encouraging me, maybe you're just giving me some constructive feedback on a way to do something.
Okay, so there's a whole range
Mm-hmm.
of interpretation, I guess, with it in regards to, okay, you're telling me something and it's yes, your words are coming across, but then this tone around that, I'm starting to, the person, the recipient is, if I'm hearing you correctly, is starting to kind of categorize that as what is this, how is this really coming across to me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and I guess my example of that is the past few years I've worked in a lot of classrooms as a graduate assistant and an ombudsman at the University of Wyoming. And some professors are really great about engaging their audience, and just the excitement that they use, the eye contact that they have, the way that they are expressing the facts, and also just the other information that goes along with any sort of a lesson, can really grab an audience's attention. I've had other professors where they are very monotone, they are not very energetic, and that is reflected in their class participation and the number of students that they have engaging in the course throughout the semester.
So the seats may get empty, a little more empty as the class goes on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's when
I'll just read the PowerPoint after you submit it.
That's when you might have some students falling asleep.
Okay.
And attendance declining, rather a classroom that has full attendance throughout the entire course.
So around this, so I've got this range that when you were talking, this engaging, expressing, and you possibly at the other end, maybe there's this kind of a dimension to this thing. Mm-hmm. And so you were describing some things. If you go down into this place that I'll just put I don't know if I want to put it, let's say it's a kind of a negative place that you're going, you start getting maybe people being disconnected, or what are some of the things that you notice that the result might be down here? So you said kind of a lack of attendance. That would be maybe that's even in the moment that I'm going to stop attending this. I'm just going to kind of check out right now or fall asleep. Or
and in the workplace, I think if you let like frustration or just lack of energy into your tone of voice, then you can kind of see a defensiveness come back at you from the person that you're speaking to.
Okay.
Maybe a lack of cooperation.
Okay.
And so on the flip side, if you explain maybe perhaps the same thing in a voice of coming to the table as just, I'm here to understand what's going on, we're trying to solve this problem, and work through it together. If you use that sort of tone, you may have a lot more positive responses in return, where people are buying into what you're having to say and are actually considering it and contributing to a solution or
okay, so you're getting buy-in and contribution. So what do you think are some of the from what I've heard you say, you've got this range that you're navigating in this of a perception. What are some of the attributes that go with this? And I mean, and it may be values, or what kind of things do you think a leader needs to focus on, or a person in the moment who's trying to lead? What are can you give me a list of a couple, 2 or 3 things that you think this is really where you need to kind of come from, or that are key?
Well, I think one is that you need to be kind of self-aware on what emotions you're giving off.
And so, time for your marker. Give me a list.
Yep.
Give me a list of how you would describe that, a word. So, okay, emotions, emotional awareness.
My spelling's terrible, so if I spell something wrong,
no, there's no spelling on whiteboards.
Great.
There's no correct, spell check.
Yep. But yeah, emotional awareness, not only to be aware of what emotions you're giving off, but also what the person you're speaking to maybe is portraying with their body language or their tone of voice. It's all about it all showing up in the moment,
not just both from you and from the person and their perceptions. Okay. Is there what else would go with that?
I think you need to be aware of the goal you're trying to achieve. If you're trying to create a positive outcome, I think you need to be aware of what language and what tone is going to get you there.
Okay.
And it is going to depend per person too. So you also need an awareness of who you're speaking to, a familiarity with your employees, because some people want you to shoot it really straight. Some people will need a little bit more sensitivity, and all of those are totally fine, but it just varies per person. And you need to know which person you're speaking to in order to know which best mode of communication is going to reach the goal that you want with that person.
So in some of our work, we talk about that as like understanding the culture of the moment, or that, this word that a lot of people, culture is, it's this big thing, but we also talk about when two people get together, that's a culture being formed. And when I hear you describe these things, it's giving an awareness, especially with the familiarity of, I'm hearing or how I'm listening to that is you're really trying to understand the culture of the moment, or that, and possibly where that person picking up on signals of language or words, linguistics, or what some people would say taxonomy of what words are keying with them. Is that similar to what you're talking about?
Yeah, it is.
And so what are some of the skills that you put into that? So if we said, okay, that's emotional awareness, goal, familiarity, are there tactics? I mean, what have you been aware of that you've seen of something someone might do, or a tactic in that moment?
Okay, so let's say in a situation where you have a problem arise at work, which I think where this is really important. It's not only important for positive situations where you're encouraging people to go on, but in every workplace you're going to have to resolve some sort of an issue. And sometimes, rather than chastising a person for something that they did wrong, maybe they don't really understand why it's wrong and understand
Okay.
how they got there. So then it might be important to sort of question that person in order to get them to a point where it sort of dawns on them, like, oh, so that's why that doesn't work.
Okay,
like, that's
so
why
let's
we
go.
have an issue
So this,
here.
so you know, in business scenarios, might say risk, or okay, let's say something went wrong, and so you're in this situation where you're walking in, rather than, as you said, chastising, you're going in and what's that skill that you're then using around that? Is it?
I think to get them to critically think about a situation.
Okay. Okay.
So, oh, geez, see, we got a G here going on. Sorry, whiteboard.
So that's okay. So get them. So the idea of critical thinking is create that. So get them to start doing that.
Yeah, and you want to assist them through this critical
Okay.
thinking process. So you might say, okay, well, you decided this, and then here is the result of this decision. But we may have set a precedent earlier on, and here, do you see that it conflicts with this precedent
So what I'm hearing you say is trying to get them to step out of the moment of, hey, I'm in this self. And would it be fair to say that they're also maybe feeling like there's all this pressure at them to because they may, the default may be, you're going to chastise this for me. Or
yeah, and what this does instead is
it
teaches them how in the future to come up to a situation and think about it a little bit differently.
Okay.
To think through maybe the long-term impacts of something so that in the future they can make a different choice.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is the skill is to start with critical thinking, but then you're also laying the groundwork for like a new mode, a new way to think.
Yeah. So then
Okay.
after you do the critical thinking, then I think explanation is really important. When I trained in one of my many jobs, I was a lead barista. So I was very particular on how I made a cup of coffee. It wasn't just that I was picky and that I thought that my way was the best way. I did things for a certain reason. I put the syrup in the cup because I didn't want to steam it with the milk, because I didn't want the milk frother to get sugared up and gross. So I think it's important for when you're explaining something to someone, you need to walk them through these steps. And it's okay to tell someone too, if you have another idea, I am all ears, because I want the best process possible.
Okay.
I do these things this way for these reasons.
So would that be, when I hear you say that, I've heard leaders say, make sure that people understand the why.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And okay, so that's where I see this is you're coming in and make sure you get an understanding or alignment around the why.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And so I think as a leader, a strong leader tells everyone, here's what we're going to do, this is how we're going to do it, with confidence. But I think a good leader also does step back and say, those are the steps and those are the why. But there's room for change. There's room for collaboration.
There's room for collaboration.
Yeah,
and
room for
change.
growth.
Okay.
But if you have an idea that you want to bring to the table to change
Very
something
good.
on how we've done it, you need to be able to explain to me the why. Why is it better to do it that way? What makes it different? And how is this going to help us moving forward?
So that's interesting you say that. And I wrote here, show me. And there's research around this and stories that people around creativity and change in the fact that listening to the kind of the new person in the room and some of the kind of the skills responses from those more experienced leaders is to say, show me. So if they're going to say something and bring it, okay, let's understand if it really can, put critical thinking around it, and how does it enhance the why that we're trying to go for versus let's just change it because I think it was my idea and I think it's a good.
Yeah.
You have to do the connection. So thank you for all this insight, Mason. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us around just a big picture of what we've talked about here?
We kind of skirted on some of this, and I think just another element that we don't have to go too far into just as leaders is training is really important. And all of this comes into training. So
Okay.
I think in the first, few months of a position, weeks, months, depending on what position it is, training is super important, and tone of voice and body language are really important too, because in those training weeks and months, you're going to set a precedent and an expectation with that person you're training. How we speak to one another, how we work through problems, how we encourage one another, and what our relationship is going to be like moving forward. So tone of voice and body language is something that I think leaders need to be mindful of throughout their entire career, but especially in training phases, I think that's when it's also really important, because that's when you're going to get the buy-in from your new employees, your trainees. That's when you want them to really contribute to your organization, and contribute maybe with their new ideas, because that's another great opportunity of adding personnel.
And well, when I hear you say that, is, hey, this is your first point to kind of set the stage.
Exactly.
For and set the stage for how we do this, but also culturally. And these skills of everything you're describing, if you show up and do that in the training, you're kind of setting this as this is the mode of the way we're going to operate and move forward, and this is the culture that we are establishing as a working relationship.
Yep.
Okay, very good. Mason, thank you very much for your insights. Always fun to talk with you.
Yes, you
and that's
too.
another session. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you to our guest and the Sprint Ahead Mobilizing Leadership people who are collectively working to create leadership for all through shared purpose, connected communities, new opportunities to learn, and action-based leadership experiences. We look forward to hearing your insights. Please connect and move forward with us.